Okay, this is Section 4, Illusion of Space, Lesson 13. So we have a vocabulary definition. Here we're going to be talking about those. We're going to be talking about construction drawing, and this is the example that you have in your book. And then we'll be talking about the two workbook exercises on the following pages. Okay, so let's start with the vocabulary, and we have 4 terms here, and bird's eye view, foreshortening, and worm's eye view. Well, a bird is up above your head, so usually that would be considered looking down. You have a imaginary landscape of mechanical forms right here. This is one of my drawings from 1998. The bird's eye view you notice in the bottom when you see these forms and you're looking down about, so this would be called a bird's eye view. Worm's eye view is when the forms are higher than you are, and here's some in the background here where your eye line is right here on the horizon line or eye line, and any forms that are above the eye line are actually when you're looking up, and that would be a worm's eye view. So let's see how that might look in a real simple drawing. So if you, we'll put the eye line, and again, as I said earlier, I use the eye line, and I'll write it over here, and the horizon line interchangeably. It's the same thing. Now in this particular example, I'm going to be using two-point perspective to illustrate these two types of views. So as I've said, I had 2 points, and they should be as far out on the paper as you can get them. That way, the forms will not be as distorted. Okay, you start with the closest corner. Now you notice my first shape is actually across the eye line, or what I called in Project 4, on the eye line. So I'm not going to use a ruler. I'm going to approximate the edges of this, have to go to each point here, and I'm just going to lightly quickly sketch those in. Now what you notice, of course, is that when a rectilinear shape is on the horizon line, you can't see the top or the bottom. So as we go above the eye line or horizon line, which is anything above here, in two-point perspective, we start out with the closest corner, and however tall you make that line, again, is going to dictate how distorted it is, because you connect this point with this point with that, same thing over here. Now what I'm slightly doing here is, again, as you know that how deep you make it is up to you, but that it does create more points for you. That does make the bottom or the top. And in this case, as it's getting higher or away from me, I'm just naturally going to make it a little smaller. Okay? I also made the closest corner smaller. I mean the line here. Okay, so this one goes that way, this one has to go over here, and that makes the bottom. So now I'm starting to develop a worm's eye view, because it's my eye line is still here, and the form is getting higher and higher. Start another one, and I'm just going to approximate these. It's going to be somewhere around in there. And you notice what happens is you're starting to see more of the bottom. The other thing that happens is that as the shape gets farther away from you and its height starts to change, that's called foreshortening, because you're seeing when you see the object straight on, you're seeing its full height. As the object gets farther and farther away from you, and you have more of an angle view of it and not a straight-on view, it's called foreshortening, because the plane is not, you're seeing it on an angle like this, like you see this pencil. You're not seeing it this way, the length of the pencil. You notice how the pencil is long this way, but as soon as I turn it, it becomes shorter. That's called foreshortening, and that's basically what's happening with these simple shapes. Now, as in Project 4, you're doing exactly the same thing, only you're making more creative shapes with it. And you're asked to shade it if we assume the light is over here. And you know, light radiates like that. So I'm simply shading these really quick for you as kind of a reinforcement about what we've been talking about last time when introduced Project 4. So this is just kind of a review, because this is part 2 of Project 4. Part 1 was simply to draw those objects. Okay, so we've kind of got a little bit of a thing going here with worm eye view. Now we're going to go this way. Again, closest corner, then I'm going up. And now I've created these other 2 points. This one goes to that point. This one goes to this point. Just reinforce this a little more. Okay, we'll do another one. You notice how the closest corner is getting shorter. The width is getting shorter. I'm getting some foreshortening in here. Also, as you can see, because it's getting steeper. Because as this goes down away from my eye line, it's getting farther away. I'm getting more of this foreshortening, so everything gets smaller. And we'll do one more here, not like this, I guess. When you're doing Project 4, it'd probably be best for you to use a ruler to make sure you get them fairly accurate, because you will be evaluated on whether these are going to the points or not. And after a while, you'll get pretty good at it, and you'll be able to lightly sketch or roughly do thumbnails like this without really having to use a ruler. So again, if the light's from over here, and now we're looking down, we now have a bird's eye view of these down here. And so I wouldn't probably light the top one, because the top ones are getting light. This side is away from the light, so I would be darkening this side. And as we've talked about, you know, you have 2 shaded sides. One's generally a primary and a secondary, so one's darker than the other one. And that's pretty much what I did there. I could have done that same thing here. I guess I was just trying to speed it up a little bit. Now in here you're going to have 3 planes. And it's possible this could get light, or it could be lighter, and you have 3 values, see, in this one. And you know, in Project 4, that's going to happen a lot. You may actually have more than that. And you may have to shade all the sides, but you also had the background to shade. And the background must be done first. And then when you do the shading on these values, they have to show up, but it gets a little more difficult. You have to plan it, and that's what Project 4 is about. It's about planning your shading, and you keep manipulating it slightly until you get all of them to show up with, you know, against each other and against the background. So again, you have horizon line, 2-point perspective, all of them have the same point. Everything above the line is a worm's eye view. Everything below is a bird's eye view. Okay? So those are the 3 of the vocabulary terms. The next thing we're going to talk about in here is construction drawing. And, you know, the basic geometric form of the rectilinear shape can be used and should be to visualize objects that have curves and angles in order to place them in their proper perspective. That probably, I could have done that here. I might have done some of that in here. But that's what this actually is here. What we have is, I'm going to redraw this for you and explain how this works. Okay? First we have a straight-on view. So I'm going to do this one first. Let me just replace this, just put this right over the top. Okay, so we're going to work with, I'm going to put this right here, and then maybe I can just move this over to the side. So basically, this is not in perspective. This is what's called a profile view. Now you can see with this chair, which we've used in other references in this workbook, the first thing you see here is that first you want to draw the front planar shape. Now, in the exercises in the following 2 pages, the first one has 4 objects in there, and you're simply asked to draw the front planar shape and then perspective. So there's 2 steps. The first is the front planar shape. Now, in that exercise, you're already given the baseline. And so in the front planar shape, like this is just this one, the baseline is down here. And we can write that in right here. This is not perspective, this is a profile view. Okay? So the first thing you notice here is that, well, let's start with this. What is this X? This X actually means this is the middle. Whenever you draw diagonals on a rectilinear shape, accurately from corner to corner, the middle of that shape is going to be the intersection. You have to draw them accurately, and that's the only time I'd probably advocate using a ruler, because if I curve these a little bit, I can move this dot up and down or left or right. So I got it just a little low. It's about right there. Okay, that's the first thing you would do. Define the middle. Say, why do I need the middle? Well, you'll need it later. You'll need it in these 2. And we're showing you the very simple way to do it. This is called the profile. Now, okay, so now we're going to draw this. And basically what I wanted you to see is that the middle is where the seat is. Now the seat's comprised of 2 parts. It's got a pad, and then it has a metal frame to it. But look at the back of the chair. You see how the back is on an angle? And the angle is separated and change shape right at the middle. Now that would be pretty good to know if you were trying to draw this. And so when you put something in a geometric shape, that's what you find out. The second thing is that you'll notice that the baseline is right where the legs are. And so they actually, and you'll notice that even the front leg isn't straight up and down, is it? It's kind of got an angle to it. So when you use a geometric shape, then it's easy to put complicated curved shapes inside of it. We can also put the little back pad is in here, and you can actually just see a little bit of the back of the second rung for the back. Also, you'll notice here I can see the other leg. It's just barely visible there, and this one's just barely visible here. Now in this case, you don't see the top of the chair. You see how the bottom legs, one's shorter than the other because they are lower. You're looking down. In this particular case, your eye line or horizon line is right here in the middle. So I'm going to put horizon or eye line is right at the intersection on this profile view. So this is just for your reference. But you'll notice then that what's going to happen is that everything that's higher is going to get lower as it goes away from you in the future, okay? Okay, now we're going to talk about the one-point perspective. And the project on the next page, the first thing you'll see is there's 4 pictures, and you're asked to finish, first of all, the baseline. So the first thing we're going to do in this one is basically the same thing. We're just going to actually redraw the front of this right here. So first I need these. If I can get them accurate. Okay, so I know the seat is there. And I'll just draw that in there. Draw it a little lighter. So I have a couple things I want to put on here. So the other thing I wanted to mention is that, you know, when doing these constructions around objects, they don't always touch all the corners, but the baseline has to be right on the bottom of the object at its farthest point. You notice how the leg is at the line for the baseline is at the farthest points of the legs, not any other part of the chair. All the rest of the chair is actually smaller than that. But that's all right. But what happens when you put in a baseline for one-point perspective, then these have to be vertical, and then your top line at the top has to be parallel with the bottom. So all you're asked to do in exercise 1 is you'll have some one-point perspective pictures, and you have to draw the baseline, and then the baseline's actually drawn for you in there at the right length. In fact, I'll show you one right here. This is a copy of that, and you'll notice how when I drew the baseline, it's farther than the part itself. That's because the widest point is actually wider than where the baseline is, but you have to draw the verticals perfectly straight up and down.